Hi everyone, my name is Nicolas Landel. I'm the YoungLiving farm manager in France. So that means I get to take care of our wonderful lavender farm in the south of France. And today I wanted to talk to you about our lavender quality and share with you a little bit what we do on the farm and why we're different. So I have a little slideshow to present to you, and let's dive in. So as I was saying, the farm I now manage is located in a village called Signan-la-Rotonde. It's in the south of France. You can actually see the village in the background of this picture. At the top is a castle where we have a YoungLiving shop. The farm was started by Gary with the help of my father. You can actually see them in this picture the first year that we bought the farm. I remember how proud my father was, and I think you can see it in this picture. On this farm, we have different crops. We grow clary sage, hyssop, oregano, rosemary, einkorn, like the field you can see in this picture. But our main crop is lavender. And this is what I'm here to share with you today, as I told you, because in this picture you have a beautiful field of true population lavender. To make this easy, this means that it's the best quality of lavender in the world. And we often say that we have the best, but I'd like to go into the details and explain what that actually means. So let's start with a little bit of history. Lavender is indigenous to France. At first it was only harvested by hand in the wild. At the time they were actually using mobile kettles to distill on site or where water was available. So if they had a river stream, a spring, then that means that they could distill. It's only in the 20th century that we actually started cultivating lavender in France. As a side note, in France, some of the farmers we work with are third or even fourth generation lavender farmers. For example, one of the farmer we work with, his great-grandfather planted his first field in 1907. So he was one of the first to ever cultivate lavender. So this shows how much experience we have. Even if we're 25 years young, we have over 100 years of knowledge on lavender. I told you earlier that we have the best quality of lavender, but to understand this, you must understand that there are actually different ways of growing this lavender. So let me just show you a close-up of a lavender. Here you would have what we would call the flowers. You can actually notice that there are the pods, the calyx. The flower, the corolla, comes out of this calyx. Actually, inside this calyx is also where the seed is located. And it's interesting to know that almost all of the oil on lavender is on this calyx. This is good to remember for later. So, a population lavender, like the field I showed you earlier, is grown from seeds. So we collect the seeds out of those calyx. We bring them to a nursery that grows a starter plant, that means a small plant, like the one you can actually see being planted in this picture. And we plant this by hand in the field. Now when you do this, when you start from seed and plant it like that, you're going to have what we call a population lavender. And I'm not going to bore you too much with the details, but I have a simple way for you to understand and remember this, and it's actually a little love story. So when a mommy lavender and a daddy lavender love each other very, very much, they make a seed. And that seed is unique because it has two distinct parents with their own characteristics, just like us. So when you have a population lavender field, each plant in that field has a different color, has a different size, a different smell, and that means that each plant in that field produces a different oil. And so just like we're all unique, all the plants in that field also are, making it a population. To show you this in picture, what I did here is I walked in one of the fields. I picked 5 stems off of 5 plants that were next to each other. I put them on the ground and I took a picture. And there you can see how nobody looks alike. There's different colors, there's different shapes. They would actually be different size, but I all aligned them for this picture. But in a population field, you could even find white lavender with white flowers, for example, because everybody's different, so there's really a huge shades of color. So if we go back to the picture I first showed you, you can see that range of color and size in that field. And this is how you notice it's actually a population lavender field. Now, there's a different way to grow lavender than from seeds. You could do what we call cloning lavender. I'm actually sure that a lot of you have cloned plants in your lab. It's not something very sophisticated, always done in a lab. So has any of you ever cut a basil stem, put it in water until it grew roots and planted it again, or cut a tree branch and planted that? Well, what you're doing there is not actually producing a new plant. You're actually cloning the plant that you originally cut from. Now for lavender, this means that you would walk in a population field like we saw before, look for the biggest plant you could find and do stem cuttings on that plant, and from that one plant you could make a field, and this would give you a clonal lavender field. Now, being clones, each of those plants have the same color, the same size, the same smell, so they produce all the same oil. Clonal lavender is often grown for selected for the bigger yield. That means that you walk in a field, like I said, and you choose the biggest plant because what they're usually looking for is to have a much bigger yield, so much more oil per acres. But you could also do clones for resistance. For example, if you're looking for a lavender that could be grown at an elevation where lavender usually doesn't grow, you would plant a population from seed. A lot of that field would die off, and the plants that would survive, you would clone these, and you would have all of a sudden clonal lavender that can survive at different elevations. Now, it's interesting to understand that clonal lavender is almost never selected for the quality of oil. They're always looking for bigger yield or a better resistance, but they never really worry about the quality of the oil they produce. And because of this, what you often see is that with clonal lavender, they have yields up to 6 times more. So they have 6 times more oil from clonal lavender than from population lavender for the same acreage. So that means the same amount of work, the same energy to distill, but 6 times more oil with that clone. Here's a clonal lavender field. You can see that each plant is the same color, size in this picture. Actually, this is often what you see in postcards or pictures for the south of France. When we have people around the farm, often they go and take pictures in these types of fields and not ours. This is actually okay with me because we grow lavender at YoungLiving not for a postcard or a picture. We grow it for the quality of oil. Here I picture it's impossible to really represent the population lavender in a picture like this because each plant is really unique in size and color. So it's not really, you can do a picture of a field but not just take one and take it in picture, but it shows you the difference in size. And if you remember, I told you that almost all of the oil is located in the top part, the flowers or the calyx. Now, on lavender, there's actually 90% of that oil that is in those calyx, and about 10% is in the stem. So, as you can see in this picture, clonal lavender, lavandine have a lot more of those calyx, a lot more of those flowers, meaning they have a lot more oil than wild lavender or population lavender that has a lot less flowers. For us, Gary knew from the beginning that population lavender makes a much better oil, and so at YoungLiving we grow population lavender. The fact that every plant in a population field makes a different oil means that when we harvest this field and distill it, we bring all this diversity together. So if a plant produces an oil, to make it simple, with a little too much of one constituent, there's a big probability that there's another plant in that field that will produce a little less of that constituents. And altogether, if we distill it, we will have a balanced oil. We could call it natural harmony if you want. Now, in an acre of lavender, we have about 7,000 plants. With a population lavender, you have 7,000 different plants making a different oil. But with a clonal lavender, each plant produces the same oil, as they are all the same. And the clones are selected for their yields and not for the quality, like I said previously. So if one plant has too much of one of a certain constituents, in a clonal lavender field, all the other plants of that field will be exactly the same and have too much of that constituent. Now there's also the question of sustainability for our lavender. Because at YoungLiving this is very important to us. So we collect seeds. When you do so, the plants transmits information to those seeds, letting them evolve over time, adapting to changes in soil, weather, and environment. But with a clonal lavender, this isn't really possible. It will always remain exactly the same as it was when it was first selected. And it's interesting to understand that actually most of the clones you find in France, those were selected over 50 years ago. Since then, everything has changed except then. So, believe it or not, we at YoungLiving are actually one of the last companies to grow and believe in population lavender. And that's really thanks to our founder, Gary Young. Almost everyone else has moved to a clonal lavender because it has better yields and bigger margins. But for us, it's different. We really want to stay true to our standards, seed to seal, and our commitment. We will continue to grow lavender for the best quality of oil, and this means growing population lavender even if it's more work and less yields. Now, if you want to join us every year during harvest, we have groups that come that learn a lot about what it takes to make the quality of oil we have and about population lavender. It's actually my favorite time of the year because not only am I harvesting and distilling, it's also the time where I get to share what we do all year round. So if you want to join us, please feel free to come and be part of our groups. And if you have any questions, let me know. Thank you for listening, and I hope to see you soon in France.